HR supply chain, highlighting and showcasing solutions for the most complex challenges facing the industry in 21st century by our team of subject matter experts and mentors. Broadcasting every week, all year round, we will present the most up-to-date series of podcasts and webinars.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bicara Supply Chain. This is Sara Iacozza, and today we have a very special guest, Sara, Chief Data Officer based in Italy. Thank you for being here, Sara. I'm really so excited to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me over. I'm really excited too.
So in today's episode, we're going to talk about why data storytelling in business matters more than ever. Before we get started, Sara, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your professional background?
I'm gonna try to be quick and fast.
Yeah.
So I think that if I want to summarize a bit my professional background, this all became kind of obvious during my PhD in cognitive neuroscience. So although I started my PhD with, of course, the ultimate goal of becoming a researcher, it didn't happen, so just a little spoiler. I became gradually less interested in the academic part of it, and I really understood that it was really important when you share findings and results to do it in a very compelling and engaging way to get people to really listen to you and understand what you're trying to get across. And of course, I'm sure many people can relate with the feeling of, being seated, listening to a supposedly very relevant talk and being somehow completely drifted away because the speaker is not doing a great job at entertaining us in some ways, right? So I got really interested in science communication and in how to apply, much of the theory around communication and language that I was studying and learning about during my PhD to real life communication. And alongside this passion, I also got more and more into the world of data. So for my PhD, I used to run studies and experiments that required a great deal of data analysis and statistical tests. And I really enjoy that discovery part. So I start, understanding that after finishing the PhD, I could actually move into that ecosystem of the data world, if you want. And at the moment, I'm currently employed in a company where I work in a product team and I wear two different hats. So on one side, I'm the Chief Data Officer, so meaning that I support my colleagues and my team members, understanding the value of data, so how to build metrics and KPI that we can use to measure the performance of our solutions or our strategy. And also on the other side, I'm also responsible for research activities that are related to user experience. So I kind of brought together, the passion for uncovering people's stories and the data skill bit. And of course, as you can imagine, as a member of the product team, I have colleagues from a very technical background, like software developers and data scientists, but also designers. So data storytelling became really essential in my daily activities to be able to reach all ears, if you want, and to share the data-driven information I wanted them to grasp from my presentation and my talks in general.
Awesome. Okay, so to start off the discussion, Sara, what is the data storytelling?
I think I'm going to use the words from one of the most, engaged and influential professional in the data storytelling ecosystem at the moment. He is called Brent Dykes. And the thing he always says is data storytelling is actually, the last mile skill that helps convert insights into action. So this idea of last mile, meaning that you can do everything with data. You can pre-process data, you can analyze, you can interpret, but at the end, if you're not able to transform complex analysis and data exploration into information that can be somehow easily digested, you don't really get to the point of producing and leading an actual change in strategies and KPIs in that sense. So I really like to think of data storytelling as the last bit of a long journey, if you want.
Yeah. Okay. And why is data storytelling so important for the business at the recent date?
Yeah, I guess it's really a matter of huge increase in data capabilities that organizations across all different sectors are experiencing nowadays.
Right.
So, being able to communicate data insights across all levels within an organization, I think is just a must have. And while maybe, in the past, statistics and data analysis were very, I think maybe very specific competencies that only statisticians and professionals with maybe mathematics backgrounds, were expected to have and master.
Yeah.
I think nowadays it's I think undoubtable the fact that we have so many products and platforms that allow pretty much everybody to have access to tons of data, right? So and imagine the situation in which everybody can access data, being able to narrate and interpret data in a way that it's accessible to other people. It's like I think it's like this skill that you don't want to miss if you're part of this ecosystem. So I just think that before we used to share data almost like if we were within a self-selected group of data nerds, right? If you forgive me the terminology. And now it's really something that you have to make the audience that you're addressing understand, empathize with the information, and maybe challenge it a bit so that it's curious and want to know more and want to investigate more. So you don't want them to be confused because you are sharing a lot of numbers and digits and not really empathizing with them. You really want the message to get across and make them engaged and curious about what you're saying, I think.
Okay, so let's jump to another question. What are key elements of the great data storytelling?
So I think the key elements are actually three. Yeah, so you have, first you start with data. Otherwise you don't have data storytelling, right? So you have to start with data, and ideally you want data being high quality, right? So quality is important because otherwise you're not sharing anything reliable and trustworthy. So high quality data. And the idea is that you put data into this narration, so this narrative that allows the audience to follow the dynamics and uncover bits by bits the finding. And then finally, what you need is some sort of support so that the narrative and the data come out nicely. So that's what we use visuals for, right? So data visualizations and some of graphics and infographics so that people are able to follow and to understand the narrative and the story in an easier way in that sense.
What advice would you give to the business leaders on how to build a data-driven company? Remember, before we get started today's recording, I mentioned this to you as well, right?
So I think one of the most important things, it's surrounding yourself of collaborators, of course, with data skills, but those people should fulfill diverse objectives and scopes. So you definitely need someone who's able to structure data sets and manage pipelines and take care of the background, what a data engineer usually does, right? You also need someone who is driven by the idea of finding patterns and understand them, like a data analyst and data scientist in more complex cases if you need. But what you also need, and I think this is very important, is you need a hybrid role. So you need a mediator, someone who is able to mediate, in fact, between the business needs and the data-driven findings and what the data is telling you and what you can gain from that. And I think this is the only way, by having a mediator, I'd say, that you manage to have actual buy-in within the organization, because that's the whole point, right? You want to have a buy-in that happens at the vertical levels, and then you want to have, so that you have the support, from the executives and managers, And then you want to have the buy-in happening horizontally. So where colleagues understand and appreciate the value of data and what it brings to their working activities, daily working activities. So I think that's essential to have different roles that are dedicated to the data ecosystem that are playing, different parts within the whole ecosystem and structure.
Sara, could you please share some examples of impactful data storytelling in a business?
Of course, you can think of data storytelling not only as good within an organization, helping creating strategic alignment, for instance. But one of the things I like to talk about is also when it comes to branding, right? So we have many companies that have been using data for marketing and branding purposes, if you want to think of that. And I think one of the most obvious example is Google, right? Google is one of the companies that have been using data storytelling for marketing purposes, sharing every year. They would share the most common words that were the entries that were in Google search engines, or they were relating and telling the story of how specific news became popular. So that idea of showing how data can help branding the organization are very powerful. And of course, maybe something that it's more closer to us in terms of historical events. I don't know if you ever seen any Johns Hopkins University platform and dashboard. So they have been doing a lot of work around COVID-19 since the beginning. So they have a very awesome interactive dashboard that makes everything, the content easy to consume and digest for people that maybe are not, fully experienced with the whole, terminology related to virus and diseases and severe, illnesses. So that's really, really powerful. And maybe if I can, another example of maybe something more cheerful. What about Spotify, right? So every X months, Spotify shares with their users the listening stories. So you have all this historical data that Spotify has been using to show you, you have liked this, you have listened to this, what about that one? And that's a great opportunity for Spotify to get more users engaged with maybe different music styles that they hadn't maybe even thought about before. So definitely a lot of, examples of businesses that I have used data storytelling in an impactful way. And of course, supply chain, being this a supply chain podcast, I can't imagine how the amount of, of requests and requirements could have in any way fulfilled without a data-driven approach, right? In terms of logistics, in terms of being always ready before you actually run out of items in stock, and how to actually reach the best opportunity and the best vendor in the easiest way, in the fastest way. So that's kind of embedded, I think, in the supply chain area, if I may. Not being an expert in my case, but I think I'm not saying anything wrong. I hope.
Awesome. Okay, so before we finish the conversation today, Sara, do you have any other KDX way that you like to share with our listener?
Yeah, maybe what I wanted to share was maybe a word of caution. So I've talked about how awesome it is to be a data-driven company and how many opportunities you can gain from having a look at data and inspiring your decision based on data. And maybe the word of caution comes from, if you really want to build a company that is data-driven, one of the first things you really have to put in place is a high level of data literacy within your organization, right? So data literacy literally means, making sure that your company and your employees have access to data and understand exactly how to read and interpret data. So while data storytelling can help, making the job easier, because there is a person who is supposed supposed to be there to make it easier for you to understand and grasp and interpret and make decision, we shouldn't really dismiss the opportunity to grow and enlarge the level of data literacy that the organization internally has. So make people somehow self-competent and be able to access information by themselves, and then maybe ask for help or clarification to the people that are in charge of being there for them.
At Bichara Supply Chain, we are committed to driving global perspective to embrace technological adaptation in improving process efficiencies. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share Bichara Supply Chain. And stay tuned for the latest updates. To learn more, visit our website www.bicharasupplychain.com. Thank you for listening to us. We look forward to seeing you at our next episode.